It felt like it came out of nowhere, but Blueprints is the next indie game to cause a stir within the gaming community. There was a lot of noise about it once the ratings dropped, particularly when Metacritic gave it a 92, which is the highest rating for a game released in 2025, eclipsing Split Fiction by just 1 point, which is some massive praise for the game. But once everyone started to play it, it wasn't what people were expecting. Everyone was expecting a bit more of a linear progression system like games like Portal, and it had comparisons to Outer Wilds, and it's not like either of those at all. Blueprints released on PS Plus, Xbox Game Pass, and Steam last week. It was made by a solo developer, taking 8 years to create. And honestly, you can see why, because everything is so thought out, from each room to each puzzle. It's magnificent. Once you get started playing and realizing how many layers that each room has, you can understand why it took so many years to come up with the ideas for the puzzles and then to execute them and tie them all together. You play as Simon, who is the grandson of a baron who named him as heir to the Mount Holly estate, but there's a caveat. To claim the estate, you must go through the manor and find the 46th room. What makes this manor so special is that each room is chosen by you, from the 3 options that are drawn up each time you interact with the door. Sounds simple, right? No, the house is 5 by 9 rooms, which is only 45, and the house resets each day, so all of the rooms and the progress you make is reset back to 0. At the start of each day, you begin with a certain number of steps that change depending on what you've unlocked, and each room you enter uses a step, but then there's also some of the red rooms that have abilities that reduce your steps by more than just 1. There's no one else in the house to help you, but by the way the music and art style tied everything together, it created anticipation and suspense that there were others watching you. As you go around from room to room, you can pick up keys that are used to unlock doors or chests, gems that will allow you to draft rare rooms, coins that allow you to buy specific items from the shops, or you could hope that they spawn in naturally, which was a bit of a risk. I thought the puzzles were pretty well constructed, as almost every room had multiple puzzles or clues that needed you to visit another room or come back to complete. It felt like I was peeling an onion with how there were so many layers to the puzzles, and then with the story on top of it as well, which I'll go through more about shortly. Some of the rooms had scaling difficulty puzzles too, so even though you experienced the same room in every run, you'd still have to think about it, and it wasn't so straightforward each time. I really liked the interconnectivity between the rooms, despite them all being drafted in different positions or not how a normal house would lay out. They all still felt like one big house. The game warns you pretty early on to have a piece of paper to write things down, which sure, go for that option, but I was taking photos because there was so much info and I wasn't sure what info I was going to need to come back to. But either way, just make sure you've got some way of coming back to information, because there is no way you're going to remember it all. As you get deeper into the manor, more doors become locked and rarer items appear that require more gems, meaning your run is determined by how many keys, items, and gems that you get from the rooms you choose. And I really enjoyed the planning and strategy it had. Do I take a dead-end option to gain some more keys, gems, or items, or do I pick a room that has lots of doors to keep my options open? It was a really delicate strategy that seemed to get easier the longer I played. Whether that was because the game was feeding more or because my strategy improved, I'm not sure, but I think it was both. But as my strategy improved, the more I was able to explore, which made the days go longer, which was great because I was able to venture further into the house. Except all I could get was the same rooms over and over again. It just felt like drip feeding of progression became further and further apart as I struggled to get the right room pairings or find new rooms, despite there being plenty that I still hadn't discovered yet. The worst feeling was finding a room that required a specific item to progress, like the dark room which turns the lights off, so you need the utility closet to turn the lights back on, and then the magnifying glass to look at the pictures, and in the beginning it took me so long to match all 3 of them into the same run. Only items that you get to keep are the ones that you store in a room that has the specific ability to store them. For example, the cloakroom can hold 1 item. That item won't appear in your run unless you get the cloakroom again, which can be really good to stop an item from spawning, but it also means that you could not end up getting a key item that you wanted to carry across into the next day. There are some temporary buffs, like if you draft the sauna, you'll get some extra steps the next day, or you can stash away some coins in the laundry. And while some of them can be really useful when paired up with something like the hovel that removes the gem requirements for rooms and they use steps instead, it is all very situational and is reliant on having everything match up the next day. Thankfully, there are some permanent upgrades and features that carry across the days, like you can find allowance tokens that give you some coins at the start of each day rather than starting from 0, which are great. Finding a permanent upgrade was one of the best feelings because you know it's not going anywhere and it's something to permanently build on. There were also upgrade discs that you can plug into one of the PCs and permanently upgrade a random room it chooses, which was pretty cool and opened up some different and unique ways to play that room. You can upgrade the closet so that it gets boosts depending on what it is connected to, or the nursery, which I turned into the nurse's station that allowed me to get extra steps if I was low. The worst moment was when I found 3 upgrade discs in one run and I didn't get a PC to spawn, so I had no way of using them. It would have helped me out so much because they're so useful, and then after that run I barely ran into them, so it was so frustrating. I really liked that they intertwined an interesting backstory about the inheritance, the family, and the house itself with the puzzles. Without trying to give too much away, the more you find out about the troubles of the family, the darker it becomes, with a missing family member, blackmail, and political intrigue. Sometimes it was hard to differentiate if a clue was to progress with finding the 46th room, or if it was part of explaining the backstory, which I thought was good because it mixed it all together and made it a very intriguing story. And it was needed because you see the same rooms over and over again, so one slight piece of new information from a new room can change your whole outlook on the room that you've seen so many times. And they give you that little bit of progress like they're drip feeding you. One clue leads to the next and unlocks another clue or something that you were trying to do previously, and it's really satisfying when you piece it all together and make some progress. This game will really test your patience, as it sometimes feels like you're doing the same things over and over again without making progress. And that leads me on to the biggest letdown that the game has, which I'm sure you probably could have guessed, is how heavily your experience is determined by RNG. If you draw dead-end rooms, not enough keys or gems spawn in the rooms you choose, or you get the wrong items for the rooms you draw, then that day could be over with no real progress made. The good thing is there are ways to reduce the RNG. For example, there's items that boost the chance of specific things to appear, or you can use the dice to redraw the options that you have available to draft. But the biggest way to combat RNG is with more RNG, and it's through the abilities of specific rooms like the cloak room that I touched on earlier. There's nothing worse than finally getting a room that you've been looking for to not get its synergizing room or item to progress. The slow drip feed of progression began to drag further and further away as the days got longer, and I didn't draft any new rooms or rooms that relied on another. I'd always end up with one and not the other. I was very patient because I really enjoyed the start of the game, but as it went on my patience slowly dwindled, which is why the game hasn't received the best reviews on Steam. Everything else was really good though. Despite that major downside, the game felt really polished and well put together, which shouldn't be a highlight, but unfortunately with how the industry is going lately, it has become one. I didn't run into any performance issues or bugs throughout all of my playthrough. The cutscenes were surprisingly good for how the rest of the game looks, not that I didn't like the art style, but I wasn't expecting the level of detail that were in the cutscenes. They were impactful and they added a lot, especially the ones that you see from the fortune teller. Some of them made the hairs on my arm raise because of how well they were created.
I see a young boy watched from afar.
Everything including the cutscenes worked as intended and ran smoothly as far as I'm aware, which is crucial for a game like this with so many puzzles going on all at the same time. For the big question of do I think this will be a contender for Game of the Year? Probably not, but in saying that, the unique style of the game and its puzzles could see it being nominated, or at the very least, I think we'll start to see more games that have similar mechanics. The majority of the game was still really fun, and you'll enjoy the game if you like puzzles or escape rooms, as long as you understand and are patient enough to play through the roguelike mechanics, which are super rewarding when you do make a bit of progress. If you don't have the patience though, I probably would give this one a miss, because even though I thoroughly enjoyed it, towards the end it started to get really frustrating that the gap between progression began to increase. I'm really curious to see what you think of the game in the comments, because so far the Steam reviews are nowhere near as positive as the Metacritic rating. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to discover more new games to play.